Alrighty guys, welcome back to another one. We're doing 10 gauge again. This time we're doing a literal fistful of buckshot. This is 24 pellets of true 30 cal #1 buck, and yes, 10 gauge. Now Winchester does offer a 24 pellet #1 buck in 3-inch 12 gauge, not 3.5, just 3-inch. However, they're using 28 caliber buckshot pellets and calling it #1 when really it's a lot closer to #2 buck than it is #1. #2 buck being 27 caliber and they're using 28. Yeah, this is true 30 cal. Also, the Winchester load is running about 1050 FPS, or so it says on the box. If I'm wrong, correct me, but I think it's 1050 or 1060. This is running a lot closer to 1200 FPS, so all around it's a better load. True 30 cal #1 buck, 24 pellets of it, closer to 1200 FPS, and 10 gauge does tend to pattern better than 12 gauge in a lot of cases in our experience. Now where 10 gauge shines is the big pellets. As far as buckshot goes, 30 cal, it's not that big, but take steel shot into consideration here. 12 gauge works great with everything up to BB. You can go a little bit bigger, but beyond BB, people, myself included, really prefer in 10 gauge, triple B, T, F shot, stuff like that, the bigger pellets. 10 gauge tends to handle those a whole lot better for patterns. 10 gauge also handles the large payloads a lot better than 12 gauge does. So this is it's just a 2 1/4 ounce load, a little bit more with buffer, but once you get up to 2 ounces of lead, the 10 gauge really does handle it a lot better than 12 gauge. You also get lower recoil with 10 gauge shooting the same load at the same speed than you would at 12. 10s typically weigh on the low side 9 pounds, high side 12 pounds, whereas your average 12 gauge weighs 6.5 to 8.5 pounds, around that area. Yeah, 10 gauge is a little bit heavier. They do kick a little bit less, or in some cases a lot less than 12 gauge. But anyway guys, the components I'm using to do this load is a brand new unprimed Remington hull from Ballistic Products. I do already have this one primed with a regular Shiitake CX2000, and these also come unskived or skived, I don't know how to pronounce that word, but I went ahead and done that with the GOP Universal Hull Skiver, whatever. It works for 410 up through, well, even 8 gauge. So yeah, that's a very handy tool to have on the hulls that need it. Now, for the powder, 37 grains of Blue Dot. You could also use long shot here, 32 grains of it. That's what I use for a roughly 2 1/4 ounce load. It works great. Yeah, Blue Dot powder, awesome. This will also take up a little bit more room in the hull. These Remington hulls are not 3.5 inch. They are 3.52, 3.53. They're actually longer than 3.5 inch. So powders like Blue Dot and Steel and even Little Gun, they work exceptionally well in these Remington hulls that are quite long. If you plan on using long shot powder with this load or any similar load, expect to use a nitro card underneath the wad to bring up stack height, or you're going to run into excess hull capacity issues. Yeah, you need a nitro card underneath that wad with these Remington hulls. They are, again, exceptionally long. We're using a TPS 10 gauge wad, obviously. This one is actually pre-slit. Normally, I use the unslit wads. I do have a few of these pre-slit ones, and, well, gotta use them up. For a filler wad, also to make the bottom of the TPS wad flat instead of concaved, we're using a 1/4 inch 20 gauge felt wad. Now, I don't have any Mylar wraps, otherwise I would be using a Mylar wrap here. They do tend to help keep the pattern together at longer ranges, as does the buffer, and it can help with flyers. But again, I don't have any. The 1/4 inch felt wad also brings stack height up to where it needs to be. The pellets will sit flush with the top of the TPS wad. A fistful of 30 cal #1 buck. I cast these using a Lee 18 cavity 30 cal #1 buck mold. I love that thing. It's an awesome mold. Probably one of my favorites actually. 30 cal and 31 cal are probably my 2 favorite buckshot sizes. They work in, well, 30 cal 24 gauge and up, 31 cal 20 gauge and up. Yeah, 30 cal is awesome. And the buffer of the day is Ballistic Products Mix number 47. This stuff is awesome. It looks like salt and pepper. It's a really good buffer. And lastly, we'll be using an overshot card. This one's actually for 12 gauge. It's a Maxi Nitro card, but don't tell it. It'll never know. I'm crimping this on my modified Lee Lodahl. It was 12 gauge. I did convert it to 10 gauge. And I do have this as a middle crimp station. The OMV Ribassator, I believe is how it's pronounced. That's probably horribly wrong, but that's what I'm going to call it. It has a pressure washer attached to it, and it just slides up in either one of the pre-crimp stations on the Lee Lodahl. I have it in the 8-point crimp because 10 gauge is traditionally 6-point crimp. The 6-point is the back station, 8's the front. I keep it in the front station. So once again, I have that primed with a Shadite CX2000, 37 grains of blue dot powder. Still using my homemade powder dippers because I can't find my actual powder dipper, which is fine. I'm sure it'll turn up eventually. It says 37. As always, double check it. And yes, we have 37 grains. Now, we need the TPS wad. Again, this one is pre-slid in case you missed that. Go ahead and seat that on your powder. Add a little bit of compression with the primer seating punch. There it is. Threw it in the floor. It's the way it goes sometimes. That's okay. I'll just grab another one. 1/4 inch 20 gauge felt wad. Drop that inside the TPS. And again, compress that down. 24 pellets of 30 cal number 1 buck. And yes, these are wheel weight alloy, so very hard pellets, and they are tumbled and polished and then powder coated green. These stack by 3s in here. Yes, you can stack them by 2, but it's kind of difficult to do without a Mylar wrap. I just throw them in there, give them a shake, let them find their own way, and there it is. Stacked by 3. I'm going to try to show you, but they're probably going to fall. Yeah, you can't see them. Next, Ballistic Products Mix number 47 buffer, or original, or ITX, BSB, whatever you got, it'll work. I don't know how much this is because this is again a homemade powder scoop. But if it helps, I have this 20 gauge shell cut down to hold 19 grains of green dot. You can actually kind of still make out my Sharpie markings on there. A little bit faded. I made this in 2019, so almost 5 years ago. Whatever that measures, it took 3 scoops of it. The total lead payload weight without the buffer is 2.21 ounces, so a little bit below 2 1/4. With the buffer, it's 2.26, so 1/100th more than a 2 1/4 ounce load. For all intents and purposes, this is a 2 1/4 ounce load. Now, back station of the Lee Lodahl, 6-point crimp. This is still 12 gauge, so the hull is a little bit tight. I do need a little bit more pre-crimp, but it's coming along quite nicely. On that back up. There we go. I realized I forgot to put the overshot card on. That's okay. For the overshot card, I have this 12 gauge Maxi Nitro card. Tear it in half or in thirds. That should do right there. These are kind of hard to tear apart. They are a very tough nitro card. Set that right over top of your pellets and buffer, and then do your pre-crimp and final crimp. Alrighty, there we go. Now we need the primer door from the Lee Lodahl. If you guys have a mech or a Pontonous Warren, this is probably completely irrelevant to you, but I'm using a Lee Lodahl. I got hair in my middle crimp station. That's what that does. It domes it. You can see the top of the hull is flared out a little bit, kind of like a skirt shape. The final crimp will take care of that. I'm actually going to add a little bit more of the middle crimp. I don't think you're actually supposed to go quite that deep with it, but it sure does make a pretty crimp when you're done. Final crimp. Oh yeah. Check it out. Looks excellent to me. That is completely even across the top, not ragged at all. The rim right here, no waviness to it at all. You sometimes get with a mech press. Nice and deep set. It's just an awesome crimp, guys. Yeah, nothing wrong with this shell at all. Looks excellent. One more cool thing about this, whenever you fire these and then reload them after doing this whole process, you can skip this right here and the crimps will come out looking like that every single time if you have the stack height the same as it was. There's no need for a GOT BN2, anything like that. That is a very nice solid crimp. A lot of people have messaged me on Facebook or Instagram or something and asked, why can't I get good crimps with these Remington hulls? They do not want to crimp good at all. And guys, the trick to doing it is skiving them, or again, skeeve. I don't know. But yeah, do that. And then use one of these. These do attach to mech presses and Ponsonus Warren. Yeah, just grab you one of these and your issues with crimping these holes will go away forever, I promise. I'm using a Reload All and I get crimps like that with them. So to close this out, recently Browning has discontinued their 10 gauges, or at least the Browning Gold, the semi-auto 10. As of right now, the BPS is still, the pump, it's still listed on their website, but it's probably been discontinued too. If you guys care about 10 gauge, I would really appreciate you emailing and calling Browning and letting them know you don't want to see the 10 gauge die. You want to see it back in production at some point in the future. I've been told that the reason why they've been discontinued is because they have so many back orders of 12 gauge to fulfill that they don't want to run 10 gauge, at least for the time being. But the word right from Browning, I've been told, is as of right now they don't know if they're ever going to put them back into production. So please reach out to Browning and let them know you don't want to see the 10 gauge die. I think Browning is the last manufacturer, production-wise, to still make 10 gauges. You can still get them made from custom manufacturers, and other places do put out 10 gauges, but nothing on a production mass scale level. But who knows, maybe we'll see some Turkish 10 gauges come on the market. But anyway, guys, I think that's going to do it for me. Kind of ended on a somber note, but please like and subscribe. We always appreciate that. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down in the comment section below, and we'll get back to you. And if you want to, go check out our Patreon. It's as low as $1 a month, and you guys get early access to content. A link to that, as well as a link to our Instagram and Rumble accounts, will be in the description below. But other than that, you guys take it easy, and we'll see you in the next one.